Hello and welcome to the only podcast where two of the three hosts have a signed John Jackson Miller The Living Force poster. I'm Luke.
Are you going? Do you want me to hit record?
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding?
I'm Max.
And I'm the posterless Matt.
Are we live? Are we recording? All right.
You didn't think that joke was funny enough, so you had to improv.
He's
The
just
joke
not
is funny, but it's only funny for us because Matt's the only one who's bitter about not getting a signed John Jackson Miller
I'm
poster.
not bitter, but also all the fans will love that. It's an inside joke.
I'm not bitter. This is like the third time you've brought it up, Matthew. Clearly it's bothering you.
It's funny. For those that weren't in the room just now, about 10 minutes ago, Matt just said, unprompted, hey, wouldn't it be funny if for our opening joke we talked about how I don't have a poster and you guys do?
No.
As he looked glaringly at Max's poster on the wall.
This is what happened. Luke said, I don't have a joke. Does anybody have anything? And I looked to my right, and there is a poster that Max got signed by John Jackson Miller, and I just so happened to I did not get one. Unknowingly why. I do not know
Even though
why.
he was there with us.
Even though I was standing right, I stand the QR code. I don't want to get Louis to litigate this. Oh, we could have John Jackson Miller on the podcast. He's a very lovely man.
If he comes, he'll be sure to give you an autographed poster. He's probably heartbroken that this meant so much to you and he didn't give you one.
That's true. He's probably a devout listener now, and every week he just gets more and more sad. He's going to mail it to us. We got to set up a P.O. box.
We have a lot to do in 2024.
All right, so we'll cut in the music to here. I just threw a grenade into Matt's whole entire editing process. Hello and welcome to our recap of the 2023 Star Wars year. This was a big year for us personally, obviously, starting the podcast. It was a big year for Star Wars. A lot of good stuff came out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to quite get into all of it. Like, there are comprehensive YouTube videos you could watch if you want to see everything that came out in 2023.
I was thinking you were going to say, and I made a video and we're going to go watch it right now.
Oh, that would be funny. I did not. I just wanted to hit our own personal highlights. So, Max, you want to go first? Like, what are your favorite things that came out for Star Wars in 2023?
Yeah, my favorite thing that came out in 2023 is The Bad Batch. It started in January of 23, so very early on, and it ran for 16 episodes, season 2, and it was phenomenal. I don't know how much you want me to say off the bat.
I was worried you were going to read your Wikipedia page again.
The Bad Batch is produced by Dave Filoni.
Bad Batch, I
Released the
agree.
big
Bad Batch was an interesting watch this year for season 2, or last year rather, 2023, because I didn't watch it in the first season every single week. I was very dedicated to it, and I feel like just busyness. I think maybe I didn't get to it every single week. I started it, and then there was a lull, and then Max, you texted me like you have to finish Bad Batch season 2.
I was the same way, and I'm super bummed looking back on it because season 2 was even better than season 1.
1000%.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I think it's one of those things too where Bad Batch, again, not to like review it, but I do think it could learn a little bit of something for the animated shows where they could have a different release schedule. Like, hey, maybe we go 3 episodes, and then you start doing 1 episode and 1 episode, because I do love when shows kind of give you a bit of a binge when you're able to sink your teeth into it a little bit. And like, I think Bad Batch, being an animated show, only half hour, I think they could afford to do that.
Young Jedi Adventures does that.
Oh,
they don't
do
release weekly. They release in batches like that. Yeah.
I love a batch release, especially like the Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2. Perfect, right? It really just is able to jumpstart you, and you're like, oh my god.
And or episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Yes. Oh my god. Yeah. Even the best example.
So
How dare I?
As I'm looking at it on IMDb, the release dates, if this is accurate, I thought that they came out one at a time, but apparently a couple of them came out 2 at a time.
Did they?
For like 2 episode story arcs and stuff. I don't remember that though, because I also did the exact same thing where I actually didn't watch it week to week as it was coming out.
That's what, yeah.
Because it was like 1 or 2 episodes. Even if it's 2 episodes, this is like a 25-minute animated show. So it's just like a weird thing to be like, oh yes, I get my weekly dose of that.
Yeah.
Like it feels like something that should be like binged more.
I have a free
I
hour on a Saturday. Maybe that's why. Maybe we all kind of learned our lesson with season 1, and they obviously try to change it, and none of us care to stick around to watch it for some reason, week to week. Because yeah, it is one of those things where I'm like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's just another benefit of having this podcast, that now we're going to be, when season 3 comes out in 2024, we'll be watching it with purpose. We definitely won't miss a week. We'll have time to digest and sit with each episode, because I'm sure we'll talk about each episode as they come.
Especially since it's last season.
And that, yeah.
It's
and,
like,
and it's great.
Yes, it is. Especially with the supposed death of Tech.
Yes.
It's like, oh, what's going to happen next? Especially episode 1. Except maybe it'll be a fake out. And
a lot more things that they set up too. So what's her name? That bad scientist lady
Oh, yes!
is another clone
Yep.
of Omega.
Crosshair.
Cody-
Crosshair and Omega.
Crosshair and Omega are together. Crosshair's kind of come back to the light a little bit. Cody was in an episode.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see Cody some more. Yeah, a lot of good things that it's set up, and I feel like for the animated shows too, it has the best overarching continuous story. Like I love Clone Wars, but it's an anthology, right?
Yeah.
Every 2-3 episodes or whatever is a single story arc. And then Rebels, it was a lot more filler. It wasn't until kind of the later seasons where there was more of a continuous story
Yeah.
throughout all the episodes. And
So
I really
really-
like that the Bad Batch kind of sticks with that continuous story throughout.
Yeah, ish.
Star Wars Resistance also had a good amount of filler episodes, so it's not really like I'm defending no one ever talks about Resistance.
But we
It
will
makes me
very
sad.
soon when we do a review.
I would like to, and I don't know. It doesn't really apply to this particular conversation, but you were like going through all the animated shows, and it bums me out that it's never a part of them. I like Resistance. Maybe this isn't the time to defend it, but it didn't even come out in 2023. Matt, what was one of your favorite things in 2023?
One of my, this is kind of a, I'll save my favorite, I guess, thing for the next round when we go in a circle, but it's a little bit of an off the cuff one. The company Mondo, who was recently acquired by Funko, who kind of discontinued the poster section, so maybe they're not in such a hot spot. But last year when they released the Deluxe 4 LP vinyl soundtrack of Rogue One. This is obviously isn't really necessarily content in the same way we're watching Bad Batch or spoiler Ahsoka or other things, but I think this is one of the most beautiful vinyl sets I've ever gotten. When you take it out of the package, it's 4 separate LPs. It also has unreleased bonus tracks that aren't on Spotify or anything else, and so
Really?
yep, those are a blast to listen to and hear. And I like music, I like soundtracks, I like vinyl. But then the actual art I think is just is great. Each sleeve has a different character on it. And they also on the other sides then have what looks like the Death Star plans, which is really fun. So between the art, being able to listen to that music and have unreleased tracks is a blast. And so that was my favorite thing in Star Wars of 2023, being able to get that, because I believe it. No, I think it came out in 2023. I believe it came out in April because I pre-ordered it in 2022, I believe. And it came out, I believe in April of last year. But that's by far one of my favorite things. I listen to it a bunch, and Star Wars soundtracks and vinyl are just so fun because you can put them on and get lost doing whatever.
That's really cool. I'm not into vinyl, and I don't really get it. When you put it on a vinyl, do you?
Yeah.
Is it like it's in the 1950s again? You pour yourself a glass of scotch and
Ah.
beat the hell out of your wife? Like,
Jesus. Did you just want to say it for that joke?
I genuinely don't get it. Like,
All right, I do, because I really was interested in that. And man, that was a zinger of a end of the sentence. But for I guess to why vinyl in general, which I got into, but I think there's this lack of, and not to get too existential with it, but there's this lack of buying physical media like there was when we were kids. Like when we were kids, going to buy action figures and seeing them in the store, and they weren't there, so you're hunting around all day, and you're dragging your parents everywhere to find this. There's this hunting aspect of it, of wanting to get that vinyl, especially with a lot of these, especially with Mondo, they do limited releases, and so. Not only do they do limited releases, but for example, the Solo soundtrack, one of my other favorite releases, but that was a couple years before, they have the Hyperspace vinyl variant. So it looks like Hyperspace. I believe I've showed this to you before as well.
yeah.
So there's only just say 300 of those. And then there's 400 of the black vinyl, which is the standard black vinyl. It's 180 grams, right? It's going to sound really nice. It's a thick vinyl, heavy vinyl, but you want the Hyperspace one because it's limited and it looks cooler. And so I think there's a funness of being able to find things. Anybody can just go online and shop for anything now. And so even if something is sold out, it's fun to go to record shops and try to find, and ask around and be like, hey, if you ever get this in, please give me a call. And it is like an old way, I think, that is still alive, of thinking kind of, and being able to hunt that stuff. And I talked to my brother, specifically Mike, about this, Mitch as well, but to get that feeling of being able to hunt something down and find something exciting. And, I still don't get it, as nearly as of a rush as I did when I was a kid going into a toy store or the Exchange up in Cleveland to see if they have that action figure that I really want. Because now it's like, it's fun when I can buy whatever I want online. But knowing I can buy whatever I want online at it's just at my fingertips isn't as fun as that hunt and that mystery. And then beyond that, it sounds fun. And then last thing I guess too is you're able to put it on, do something for 20 minutes, turn your brain off, and then know you're gonna have to flip it over. you get distracted and you feel the music, and then you're able to flip it over and go on for another 20 minutes, and it's a nice increment of time. So I do that a lot when I'm writing. So when I'm writing by myself, I put a vinyl on. I'm like, okay, hit go. I get lost, and then it's an instant stop. Right, the music stops. The needle goes up. It goes off by itself, and I'm forced to switch it. So it's a nice mental timer for writing as well.
That makes sense. The being able to write is a good activity to do while listening to something like that. I like to put on Taylor Swift in my house and just on Spotify on the TV, and it doesn't give me like a set time to change it or do something like that. It just starts playing not Taylor Swift after it gets through the album, and it plays like randomly some song I'd never heard of, and it just fills me with rage. So I would love to have the opposite of that experience.
Have
with
you ever
vinyl.
tried a Spotify playlist of all Taylor Swift's music? 'Cause that, surely you will not run out for at least a couple hours.
I like listening to the albums one at a time
I agree. That's another thing, is listening to an actual album, because that's the thing, is I feel like a lot of things are like, oh, it's a great song, but like actually have a sit down and have an experience with an album is great. And that's not a new thing, and that's such a bullshit thing that people always say, but it is really nice, actually.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we had that conversation. So you like to write while you listen to your vinyl.
Yes.
And I did not actually think that you do beat your wife. That was a joke about men in the 50s.
Yeah, I figured. Jesus.
Just in case your FBI agent is listening.
My FBI agent? What does that mean?
Everyone's got one.
You haven't heard that meme? God, you're old. Everyone has an FBI agent that follows you around on the internet.
No, maybe I've heard that.
Anyway, not my favorite thing in 2023, because there was a lot to like, but something I really wanted to highlight is the Young Jedi Adventures, the kids series that came out. It's good. It's in the High Republic, so it's right up my alley. And I just think it's such a fascinating gaping hole in Disney Star Wars that needed to be filled. Like, there was no Star Wars kids show.
I don't know why you're
For
phrasing it things
eight-
like that.
What do you
The
mean?
giant gaping
Like
hole that needs to be
gaping
filled?
hole.
Jesus, Luke. What are you doing this episode? Also, did you just make money by mentioning the High Republic again?
If only.
And there's more money.
But you know what I mean? Like, Disney had Star Wars
Yeah.
for 8 years and just now came out with a true kids show. Like, I know they were making animation, but we've talked before. Like, it's aimed at 10-year-olds for Rebels Season 1 at the youngest. And there's obviously Disney fans that are a lot younger than that. I'm surprised it took them this long to get a true 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old age targeted show.
Yeah, that's true.
I always think about how whenever people talk about Clone Wars or Rebels, we're very passionate about it. It's a very good show. If you call it a kid show, we get very defensive, even though maybe it is one. But it's an animated show. It's not a kid show. It's really good. It's got great adult themes. And then I remember when this show was coming out, and I was like, oh, this is great. We're getting another animated show. And then I started to kind of like see the trailer or whatever, or get an idea of it. And I was like, oh, this is a kid show.
That's a kid show.
And then it upset me more that I was like, son of a, is this what people think when they call Clone Wars a kid show?
Yeah.
Like they see these two things and they're just like, yes, those are the same.
I think there's a weird connotation also with like, oh, it's an animated show, so it's a kid's show. Like, I'm trying to think of when that started. It had to be with like the Hanna-Barbarian? That's not right.
Hanna-Barbera.
Thank you. Yes, Hanna-Barbarian. What the fuck am I thinking? It had to be in that era with like Scooby. I love Scooby-Doo, Where Are You as well. But like, it had to be with that era with the Jetsons and the Flintstones, because I feel like, I'm thinking of the 90s. You think South Park, you think The Simpsons, you think Family Guy, even when it started in the late 90s. You think of all these Daria. You think of all these animated
It's
shows.
pronounced Dora. to explore.
Yeah, oh yeah, that is, yeah. All these animated shows that are for adults, and I feel like they're, for some reason it was like, oh yes, we all enjoy those types of shows, and for some reason I feel like it got skewed back into like, oh, it's just animation is for kids. I'm like, well, that really, and so now there's a weird connotation with it.
But there is like a lot of success in Rick and Morty and
Yes.
Archer and all these
Yeah,
adult animation. There's just no line in people's heads. Like, it's either kids or adults. There's no like an animation for everyone.
Maybe that's why this does get blurred, because this is kind of for everyone, because it's like, well, it is for kids, but it's also very adult and thematic,
it's
I
like
guess. I
like
don't
the
know.
socks I'm
Clone
wearing
Wars.
right now.
Yeah, Clone Wars and Rebels. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Bob's Burgers, the perfect combination, I think. That's a show that doesn't skew too adult, but also doesn't skew too kids. It can be very raunchy, but also can be very heartfelt and whatever. So
Is that not considered adult animation? I've never seen it.
Oh, you should really watch it. Yeah, they also, Luke, it's like they do like musicals and stuff in it too. You would love Bob's
I do
Burgers.
like
It's so good.
I do like that. I typically don't like adult animation because the animation style is
Mhm.
so low effort. I don't like the style. You know,
Like,
like
yeah.
Family Guy and
Mhm.
Simpsons. It's
Oh,
just,
Simpsons is so good.
Yeah.
I love the animation silence of Simpsons, but that's a whole other thing. I can see that with South Park and Family Guy, but
Mhm.
Simpsons is so good.
There's some animation styles that I don't like.
Same.
I always make the same joke to one of our friends who really likes Rick and Morty. That because I've never seen it, but I always compare it to Family Guy. And it really upsets them. Whenever I say something about Rick and Morty, I'm always like, oh, you know what that reminds me? You should check out the show called Family Guy. I think you'd really like it. He's like, no, this is like a really good show. Even though I do the exact same thing with Clone Wars.
But it's different for Star Wars.
It is
I-
different.
I agree. Max, what else you got in 2023 that you want to talk about?
I wanted to highlight Rise of the Red Blade. It is a book that came out earlier this year. I actually did a Rogue One on it. You can go listen to it. I break down the entire plot to the book, and it was so good. It was one of the few Star Wars books that I could not put down, and I was really thankful for it because when I decided to do a Rogue One on it, it kind of gave me an obligation to read the book. And oftentimes, when I'm doing anything out of obligation, I start to lose the joy. And that didn't really happen with this one. Like, I genuinely loved reading it throughout the entire book. It was really good. And I said it in the Rogue One, but I'll say it again. I love that it was just completely disconnected from everything else going on. This wasn't a promotion of some big event. It wasn't a tie-in to an upcoming movie or anything like that. This was just a one-off story that the author said, hey, you know what? I got an idea and I'd really like to tell it. And they did it. And it was fantastic. And those are the types of things that I always look for. Like, just genuine ideas like that, original ideas. And the plot of the book was really good, and it dealt with some really heavy themes too. Themes that, had I kind of known about it beforehand, it might have even turned me off a little bit. Like, if someone was like, oh, there's this really great Star Wars book, it has to do with the issues of like belonging and identity and mental health, I'd be like, oh, that doesn't sound very Star Warsy to me. But then when I read this book, it was very powerful and it was really good. So I highly recommend it. I recommend you listen to it. If you don't want, or recommend you read it if you have already read it, or if you don't want to read it, then go listen to the Rogue One where we talk about it, because it was so good.
Is that how you feel about hanging out? Like, if you just hang out with somebody you enjoy, but if we have plans, you're obligated to them, you don't enjoy it?
Yeah, every time we're about to record, I'm like, oh gosh, these guys. Can we just hang out tomorrow instead?
And that's how you feel about prison, too. You like being alone in solitary confinement, but when you're obligated to do
Yeah,
it,
once they
court
force
order.
you there, that's what draws the line.
I'm glad you thought that was funny, Luke, because that was my original joke. And then
That
I went,
really got me.
I went to the hanging out.
It is just like that. I love being alone, but I would hate prison.
you have that thought sometimes where you're like,
I
what-
haven't, but
oh man, yeah, you have, because for your birthday, your wife gave you a hotel room so you can just go be by yourself.
I did not have the thought of that being like prison, though. It was like the
That's
opposite
true.
of prison. It was such a gift, and I loved it. I went and stayed alone in a hotel room and was with my thoughts and read a book. I loved it, but being in prison is not the same.
Okay, I'm glad that they got you.
Yeah, that was 10 out of 10 joke, Matthew.
Thank you.
Rise of the Red Blade.
Yes, sorry.
Nothing like prison. It was fantastic. Go
Sorry.
read it.
Yeah, I really could. And you also have a great Rogue One about it, and I think that was really entertaining, and I think you gave a great synopsis of it, and we read the book, which something that we've been doing, with me and Duel of the Fates, you with the whole High Republic, and you with the Rise of the Red Blade. It was, I think, we've been.
Oh,
Done
and
again, yeah.
sorry, one last thing about that book that I also wanted to say. Again, I talk about it in the Rogue One, but it's also all building up to a tie-in to a very minor issue in a Darth Vader comic series, and the fact that those things just connected so well, it felt like it was just for me. It was awesome.
Yes, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, because the stars really aligned, because you went rogue the month before about that Darth Vader comic, and then
Yes.
the month after about Rise of the Red Blade.
And I did not do that knowing that was going to happen. It was just crazy. Like, as that was happening, my jaw was just open. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. My mouth was agape, Matthew.
All right.
What's going on today?
Anyway, Matthew, what do you think about
What am I thinking about?
the next topic from 2023 that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the obvious. It's also low hanging fruit. But my favorite thing in Star Wars, besides again this podcast, which we can get to a little bit, is Ahsoka. I mean, beyond it being an amazing show, being able to sit down and watch it with you guys, which was a blast. I think because usually I watch, kind of watch Star Wars in a silo a bit. Like obviously Max, you and I watched Mando every week. Luke, I guess you probably would have watched this if it came out earlier in the day, wouldn't have told us about it, but you did have the choice. But be able to watch it with you guys was a blast, and then record right after. I don't think those are the experiences. That's why we started this podcast, like to be able to sit down, watch the show, and then record right after. Like we were like 14 years old. Like it was a blast to do. And then the show itself was amazing. I mean, like it's like the perfect combination between Mandalorian and Andor, which again we've talked to nausea about within Ahsoka, but I absolutely loved Ahsoka every single week, every single episode. The theorizing that went along with it, seeing Ezra, seeing Thrawn, seeing these characters that we've seen in Clone Wars and Rebels in live action for the first time ever. I mean, I don't think it could get any better than that, right? I mean, it was so stellar.
I agree. I think Ahsoka would get the subtitle of 2023 in Star Wars if I had to pick one thing. I mean, I obviously talked about Young Jedi Adventures, and I'm about to talk about the High Republic, but I wanted to talk about a bunch of different stuff, and I think Ahsoka was probably my favorite part of 2023 as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, hard to say that wasn't the highlight.
Yeah. And you did it. I did.
Max actually hates Ahsoka.
No.
And then that comes back to me, and I'd like to talk about the High Republic, of course, because 2023 is a lot of time for a lot of stories in the High Republic. It was mostly Phase 2 and the very beginning of Phase 3. So we had like the mainline High Republic comic and the High Republic Adventures in Phase 2 and in Phase 3. And there was a lot that I didn't get a chance to read, and a lot that I did. Overall, I hadn't been liking Phase 2 as much as Phase 1, or now that Phase 3 has started, as much as Phase 3. There's a lot of reasons that the jump back in time was a bold decision, and it kind of takes you out of all the caring about all these characters and stuff, and the story is kind of predictable because, like, it's about the path of the open hand that will turn in, that's this cult, and it turns into the Nile, and it's very obvious because there's a couple of people with the last name Rowe, and you know that they're going to be descendants of Marchion Rowe, and so it's like not that surprising. A lot of the first couple books and the comics and the audiobook dealt with the same event, the Battle of Jeddah, which was like cool to see, but you just kept seeing it from different points of view, and it wasn't that great. But now that Phase 3 has started, I am blown away at how much it is pulling in from Phase 2, despite it being like a 150-year gap between them. I was really, really surprised when I read Eye of Darkness, which I think is probably my favorite book that I read in 2023. It's the first book of Phase 3, and it just came out in November. It's the one that I insisted the three of us would read together, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys did not?
We did not. Was that the one that there was no problem for us to read that?
That was the one. It was when I did my Rogue One in I think October. I said the first book for Phase 3 comes out in November, and we're all going to read it. And then I never brought it up again because...
Yeah, I was going to say you never brought it up again.
Was that the difference? Would you have read it if I brought it up?
All I'm saying is you bought us a couple Black Series figures. If you just would have saved it up a little bit more, you could have bought us the book.
Is that the difference? If I buy you the book,
no,
will you read it?
No, it's 100% the time commitment.
That's true.
Yeah, because I
think I might even have that book. I have so many Star Wars books on my shelf right now, and I actually have 2 shelves of Star Wars books. One of them has read, and one of them is need to read. So it's the time.
You know what would be fun is if you just read it to us, like story time once a week. We did your Rogue One, you just read it to us, and then I realized that's just an audiobook.
But like audiobook with a live audio.
But like, but how fun would that be?
There's actually this guy. Oh my god, I forget his name. Who's the guy the Mark Thompson? Well, now the joke doesn't land. I was gonna say there's this guy named Mark Thompson that will do it for you, but he's really, really good at it.
But you had to think about his name first.
Oh, just a second brain. Oh well.
Just imagine in every conversation regarding Mark Thompson, people are going to be like, "Oh, Mark Thompson, he's one of my favorite book readers." What's his title?
Narrator.
Narrator. Thank you.
Book readers.
And people are going to be like, "Oh, I prefer Force for Thought."
I prefer Force. Let me hear that silky voice, Luke.
That's actually so funny that we're talking about this because I have listened to a lot of Star Wars books as audiobooks, and The Eye of Darkness, this most recent one, is the first one that I've actually been like really blown away with the performance of the narrator, especially because Mark Thompson it's not like this is his first time. He's narrated a lot of books that I've read already, but his performance, which I've never really thought of it as a performance, but it really is, at least in The Eye of Darkness. He's able to do the voices for different characters, but he's able to bring a ton of emotion to all these characters. And I it really took me aback a few times listening to The Eye of Darkness. And so, the High Republic overall is one of my highlights of 2023, as I'm sure it'll be for 24 and 25. But I think The Eye of Darkness takes the prize for the overall story. I do hope to go rogue about it, so won't talk about it too much. But the comics were also really good. Like I said, The Eye of Darkness had a lot of tie-ins to Phase 2, which surprised me, and it made me go back and reread The Blade, which is a Phase 2 comic that came out in 2023 about Porter Engle. And upon reread, that comic is also super good. Max, did you read that one?
I did.
I loved it because General Vyse, the villain in that, is in The Eye of Darkness, and she's
nice.
Miri Allen, and she's like younger in The Blade, and then she's, I don't know, like 150, 200 years old, and that's like a relatively new lore addition that Miri Allen's live really long because Vernestra Rowe is going to be in The Acolyte, and she's in the High Republic right now.
That's cool. I didn't know that. No, I read it, but I thought it was only okay. But again, when I read the High Republic comics and I'm only getting the comics, I'm not getting the other tie-ins like the other novels or anything like that. I always just kind of feel like I'm missing something. The Blade was kind of like a standalone comic, so I did enjoy it for what it was. But I also read the High Republic mainline comic, which had to deal with the Battle of Jeddah.
Uh-huh.
And that did have that feeling where I was like, I feel like I'm only getting half the story here.
Yeah, it was weird. Like every comic or every instance of that story being told felt like that. And you were just seeing like the battle from a different point of view. And like in the Battle of Jeddah and in the book and in the comic, that was all like alluding to like, oh, the path of the open hand is behind all of this. And like as the reader, you know that they're going to turn into the Nihil, and you know that they're behind all this, and you just have to watch as several different characters from several different stories figure this out. And that didn't quite land for me. But The Blade did, and the High Republic Adventures in Phase 2 also really landed for me. That was the one with Dexter Jettster being a space pirate, and
That's
with
so
Maz
funny.
Kanata. That was a lot of fun. But
Before we go farther, my mind is going a million miles a minute right now about Mark Thompson. You think we can get him on the pod? Because I got a lot of questions about narrating. Do you think he had to read that entire book beforehand?
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you think he's
100%.
sitting in the studio
It's
reading
like-
and he's like, oh, shit?
No. It's like it's
you
gotta be like a script,
absolutely
right?
read it
Yeah.
Before, I would imagine.
You think it's not even the book? He has like a completely different draft of it?
Yeah, probably. In order, especially line-wise, to read, I assume.
Yeah, maybe he just has his Kindle with the brightness turned up.
That ain't good.
No, you absolutely have to read that before. I mean, how could you even read it if you're not trying to do voices? Not to mention, you got to start doing a voice, like if there's a page break and then it just opens up with dialogue and is like
You only get
dialogue,
dialogue,
said Yoda, and you have to do a completely different voice.
That's funny.
Like they premeditate all that.
Interesting. I
Well,
got a lot of questions about how that works. I would like to know more.
when we were talking to John Jackson Miller, he mentioned that he
Matt is shaking his head. You're bitter about it, Matthew.
I did that
he's
for
mad.
Big mad that he didn't get the signed poster.
When Max and
I'm
I were
stealing
talking
this.
to John Jackson Miller, he
Hey,
mentioned that
Hey, I talked to you more than Max. That's what works me.
when we were all talking to John Jackson Miller,
There we
he
go.
mentioned that he was he had just sent in the pronunciation key to the narrator, who, by the way, he would not tell us who the narrator is for the Living Force audiobook. I hope it's Mark Thompson.
Mm.
But he said that he sends in a pronunciation key, and that really surprised me because I've wondered that before, because in the High Republic, at least, there are different pronunciations in different audiobooks on the pronunciation of Marchion or Marchion Row, and just a couple of other little oddities that I've caught in other books, like in Shadow of the Sith, the one with Luke and Lando in between episodes 6 and 7. Beaumont Kin is in it, and he was the guy that is played by Dominic Monaghan in The Rise of Skywalker, the one that talks about dark science and cloning, the guy that plays Mary in Lord of the Rings and Charlie in Lost. And the narrator very clearly just read the name Beaumont, assumed he was French, and put the thickest French accent on this character. And I was like blown away because I knew the guy's name, and I like had to re-listen to it a few times because I was certain I was mishearing this, but they just got someone dropped the ball there about the pronunciation or the whatever dialect of that character, because it was not a thin accent. It was 100% the Frenchest guy you've heard in Star Wars.
I understand pronunciation, but do you think that these actors ask the authors about dialects?
They should. I mean, that's an
'Cause clearly they
aggressive
don't.
character choice to just roll with as a narrator.
I think it depends too on like. So I feel like some writers are probably like, oh yeah, like it's an actor's choice, do whatever. But I think others are like, oh no, this is what this person would sound like. But that's why I love that. That's talking to John Jackson Miller. Those like intricate details of talking about like pronunciation keys and stuff like that. That sounds like so much fun to do. Can you imagine being like, this is what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna write a pronunciation key.
Yeah, they have such a cool job.
Yeah, it's such a cool job.
I
Again,
remember
going back to the obligation, I feel like if you had to do that, you'd actually be really annoyed. I feel like that's the same thing as like tracking or something for work, and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, that's a good point.
going back to that. I remember at
prison?
at a High Republic panel at Star Wars Celebration, Mark Thompson was talking about how he was at a High Republic Celebration panel. Mark Thompson was talking about doing the voice for Markion Ro, and that Markion Ro was like the overarching villain of the whole High Republic era, and it's a very iconic, in my mind, it's a very distinct voice, and he talked about getting the idea for it from an excerpt from the first book where it said Markion's voice, just a breath, even a whisper, and something along those lines. But he took that little bit and made the voice, and it's very, breathy and quiet, and you can tell that he really dove into that one description of his voice. And I remember the authors that wrote this character talked about hearing it for the first time, and they were like, wow, he sounds super cool. And so I can't even imagine like writing a character. And
But
then
was it
hearing
what they
him.
had in mind?
I mean, they wrote his voice was just a breath or a whisper,
Yeah.
but they'd never heard it. And so, yeah, I don't know. They didn't, it's not like a director on set telling Mark Thompson how to talk.
Hmm.
There is
The power.
some degree of agency for the narrator, but I'd love to see where that line is drawn.
Is there not some sort of director? I would think that there is.
That's
yeah,
true.
but it's
They're
not like a
probably-
creative. It's not like the author.
It wouldn't be the author. Yeah.
I
Because
think it's more of like a
guess-
production sound, honestly.
Yeah,
what
that's
I
what I would
imagine.
think.
Yeah, or there's someone probably that'd be like, "Oh, let's do another take," that kind of thing. But also, when I think on that level, with narrating a book, it might be a little different. It's because it's not really like you're doing an animated film where there's a director to be like, "Oh, I want you to sound more like this." I think it probably is a lot of pre-planning and probably more of like a production sound person and someone there from the company that's like, "Okay, yeah, let's just do another line, just make sure like things are." But I think they probably put the faith in the narrator themselves. I would assume.
I agree, but we're kind of diving down a pretty deep tangent now.
Yeah,
Let's
sorry
talk
I
about
about
love
that.
the
We'll
tangent.
keep going.
a couple other stuff that came out in 2023 that we didn't add on our top of the list, but I'd still be remiss if we didn't talk about Mandalorian season 3. I know I like that show more than, or that season more than you guys, but it was a massive part of 2023.
Yeah, it was. It's an odd thing because when you compare it to Ahsoka, like we just talked about, it is the worst season, right? Do you think it's the your least favorite season though? I can't remember. That was the first
That's
two
such-
episodes we've done.
That's such a hole or a corner you're talking me into. I mean, probably,
No,
but
not to talk in the core, but it is an odd thing though to be like we've had maybe one of the best seasons of Star Wars we've ever had, but also maybe debatably one of the worst next to Book of Boba Fett. So it's an odd thing, I think, to be like, yes, we had some amazing highs in Mandalorian, but we've also had some very questionable. There's a lot of question marks around that season. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Star Wars is fun to watch. So yes, I was very excited to see those characters again on screen, and you said it was a very big part of the beginning of last year, which is
Mhm.
crazy.
I just looked it up to fact check it for myself because as you said that, I was like, wow, I totally forgot about that. Did not realize that
That
was
Mando
this year.
season 3 was this year,
Yeah.
Or last year.
2023. Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, folks.
Uh,
See you, Sammy. I'm just kidding.
Come back, Sammy. Hold on.
not to go backward, but Mark Thompson actually does
sounds
follow
wrong.
us on TikTok because
What?
he's I think he's actually the only person that we follow on TikTok and follows us back, and he's right or whatever in TikTok is one of our friends because of that fact.
Well,
And
send
so
that message.
whenever I upload a new video on TikTok, I always watch his TikToks because it goes straight to your friends. And
Is
he does
he-
not post much, so I've seen like the same couple TikToks from him a lot.
I can see Max scheming right now.
Yep, the wheels are turning.
We should
Okay.
send him a message though. I'd love to talk to him about. I mean, all the intricate. I would love to go down that rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, I would want him to say my name in all these characters' voices.
There's the intro. We got John Williams scoring.
I wonder if that's a copyright thing. These voices to be
With Star Wars, potentially.
Just the
how
voice? How do you
does
copyright
that
a
work? I have
voice?
no idea.
If you do that voice for some, no, there's no way.
No.
Especially Mark Thompson can just go around and do
They-
this voice at will. You know,
That's
Yeah.
true. Well,
does
let's
he have
ask
a
him if he-
responsibility to a legal responsibility to Lucasfilm to not abuse that voice?
That's what I was gonna say. It's probably not a legal thing, but it's probably not. It's probably frowned upon if he was like, "Hey, so we've seen you've been doing a lot of podcasts, and for some reason you've just been speaking like Mace Windu the entire." But like that is probably an odd. That is probably weirdly. I don't know, but send a message. Let's get going.
Yeah, maybe we will. Other things that came out in 2023, the games, only one game, Jedi Survivor.
Yep.
I'm the only one that played it. I gave it a pretty harsh review in my Rogue One
Because you gave it a B, I think. You were like-
because I reviewed it not
For
as
Luke,
a video
that's
game
scathing.
fan.
you were like you would not play again. Not interested. 8 out of 5 or 8 out of 10. Sorry,
8 out of 5.
8.5 out of 10.
As a video game, I loved it because it was Star Wars. As a Star Wars thing, I didn't love it that much as a video game. Like it's hard when it's a sequel to such a great game like
Yeah.
Jedi Fallen Order, and so it doesn't really do that much new stuff gameplay or story wise. And it's like, why, if I'm gonna get this story, I could just get it in like a comic book. Playing the game is not that much more rewarding to me versus relative to the time commitment that it
I do think
requires.
that games like that should be a single standalone game because you just said it's hard. Games shoot themselves in the foot. I think when they're like, okay, how do we up this now? And I think like I said this in your review as well. It's like the Arkham games did it perfectly. Where it's like, hey, we have the technology to make a whole Arkham City, but you know what? Let's start with Asylum first and then build up to it. I think it's one of those things where like that game did it perfectly. Like the mechanics were slightly different, but the story was really what you're there for. And the same thing with Jedi Survivor and that and Fallen Order is just like, okay, well, like it's Cal Kestis going on this journey, but there's not much new gameplay wise, and it's like how much am I invested in the character? Those games are better off of like one-off games. Same thing with the potential Eclipse. It's like, oh, it's a great Star Wars game, but you can move on and it's okay. Start
Yeah.
introducing those characters in live action once the game is set up.
capital letters on that potential. I don't
Yes,
think Eclipse
that's-
is ever
yeah.
going to come out.
In quotes.
Another thing in 2023, no movies.
Yeah.
I'm getting pretty ready for another Star Wars movie. If you had told me in 2019 when The Rise of Skywalker came out that 2023 would come and go and we would not just have another year with no movies since The Rise of Skywalker, but we're not even close. Like there's not one going to be in 2024, hopefully 2025 if this
Yeah.
Rey movie doesn't fall through the cracks, which
I think they were
I would
supposed
not be
to-
surprised if it
50-50.
did. Yeah.
Didn't we say? Or not? Didn't we say? But wasn't there's rumors? There's always rumors, but they potentially start filming in like March of this year.
The Rey movie?
That yeah. Oh, especially that's what.
I didn't see that.
Especially with the director just saying that quote. I feel like they are gearing up to do something. It
When
feels
do
like
when do they announce cast? They haven't announced any cast beside Daisy Ridley. They would have to do that
That's
at
true.
least before they start filming.
I don't think so. I was working on a show for Amazon, and the show was shot. The season 2 is written, and they didn't even announce the cast yet. So that definitely can be. It's all up to them how they want to release that stuff. To be honest.
Wow, that's interesting.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be opposed to them starting. I've said many times before, keep your work out of the news until it's actually concrete work
Yep.
and you can have something to talk about. I would love it if they just started making it and didn't
Yeah.
make a big fuss
I
about what
also-
it might be.
I also think the sequel trilogy, as we always talk about, is underappreciated, and I think they'll get a appreciation for it. And I think, which is going to be crazy, it'll be 5 years since Rise of Skywalker came out, without a movie, presumably. And so after this year, so I feel like we're only a couple days in to 2024, but you know, if this full year, I assume there's not going to be a Star Wars movie. Maybe 5 full years since it, one has come out, and so I feel like that is a good amount of distance, I think, to reset and recalibrate. They did the TV show thing. I think they've kind of started perfecting it with Andor and Ahsoka. So they can keep that train rolling, plus kind of get back on that movie train, making special occasions. I think we'll be in a great spot.
I think it's all a balancing act, and all the major production companies are trying to figure out where we are exactly in the streaming wars specifically,
Yeah.
because obviously there was a huge push for like original content, TV shows and everything. And I think it's going to be weird when we look back on this period of Star Wars where it's like, oh yeah, that was when we just got tons and tons of TV shows.
Yep.
And then they announced like these 3 movies, right? And they, for some reason, said they were going to be like in consecutive years or something.
Yeah.
I think they might have even said 2 of them would be in the same year. I
Hmm.
forget. Again, we don't report the news. But like if that is the case and we get a movie in like 25, 26, and 27, Like that would just be crazy how there was like such a push for TV shows, and then all of a sudden we just got like a bunch of new movies.
Yeah, it's because
And
TV
it's
shows
like-
are unprofitable now. You know what I mean? Like they did it.
That's the problem. They're trying to figure it out.
Did
yeah.
you see the Discovery and HBO thing? That like that huge merger, and now they're just like they lost like so much money. They're like looking to fold it into Paramount.
No, I
Paramount?
did not see
Yeah.
that.
Paramount's going to come out the winner?
Not with HBO, but with Discovery. It's just I don't understand how people they can't see things. They're seeing with numbers and stuff, but it's like we as the audience were like that. This seems like a bad idea when it happened, and it was.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting.
Anyway, other 2023 stories we had From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi. I am not caught up on those, but another 40th anniversary of an original trilogy. I hope that they start doing, I guess the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace came and went. Maybe 30th anniversary in 2029. That's a long time from now. I think that'll be the next From a Certain Point of View book we get. There's no way they wait till 2039.
No, we might get Phantom Menace 25 years.
25 years? That'd be nice.
I'd also like to see it in theaters.
I mean, we're already getting a Mace Windu book, a Mace Windu comic, The Living Force.
Yeah?
They're doing a lot of Phantom Menace era stuff next
And
year.
they did 45 years of in theaters of Return of the Jedi. So why not do 25 of Phantom?
That was 40 years.
Was it?
2023 to 83.
Yeah, I was just saw it.
That
I
was
knew
your
what
Rogue
year
One.
it came out.
There was also the Kira book, Crimson Climb. Did anyone read that?
That just came out this year?
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate
I thought
you
that was
looking at
older.
me when you said that, knowing I didn't.
We should read more comics. I would
That was
love
on
to get to
my-
a point where we, between the three of us, read all of these stories.
Yeah.
We're all having kids this year, so it's going to be tough. But
Together too, it's crazy.
that one kid is going to be so loved.
No, that was my resolution, was to read a book, and I've never had a kid. This is the first kid, and I'm very excited. But I do want to. Part of my resolutions, like in my personal life, is just to be able to like enjoy life a little bit more, in the fact of like taking a step back from just like things like this podcast. No, from just being able to slow down a little bit, and so hopefully being able to read and just not be as go is and enjoy having a child and reading Star Wars books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What a life,
Max, you're kind of our comics guy. What do you think about comics in 2023? We had the Star Wars mainline, Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, Bounty Hunters, the crossovers, Hidden Empire, and Dark Droids.
Yeah, Hidden Empire. I did like that crossover event a lot. There was kind of 3 different crossover events happening. It was like a trilogy. War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, and then Hidden Empire. They were all good.
Well, Hidden
the-
Empire was the only one that came out in 2023. So keep your mind on straight.
Oh, was it? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter.
oh,
That was a trilogy.
I
and
guess that
it's-
does make sense
pertinent.
because like you said, the Dark Droid story arc as well. That one like literally just wrapped up. And I think they try to do like one crossover event per year. So I'm actually in the process of reading that one right now. And stay tuned. I'm probably going to do a Rogue One on it in February or March, where I'll break down the Dark Droids comic crossover event.
Love it.
Are you reading just the 5-issue actual crossover series, or are you reading all of the crossover event issues in Star Wars and Darth Vader and Bounty Hunters and Dr. Aphra?
There's like 2 series that are kind of ongoing with the event. There's the Dark Droids story, and then there's a D Squad series as well. So definitely both of those. And then my goal is to also read all the tie-ins from the Star Wars mainline, Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, and Bounty Hunters.
Nice. I look forward to that. Anyone else have anything else from 2023 that they would like to talk about? Like personal stuff? We started the podcast.
Yep.
That was a big deal. That's
That-
what's going to go down in my mind for the best Star Wars of 2023.
Same. I know we were talking about that, and this is super exciting to be able to, record. I know, like our intro joke, if anybody goes back and to listen to the crawl, as we call it, was just like, we the 3 friends decided to, record our conversations, because after every episode of after every random thing, the 3 of us, I think, view Star Wars at least similarly. I think Max and I view it very on the same page, at least movie wise. I know you I guess maybe you guys do too. Maybe it's like maybe you're the middle, Luke, of seeing Star Wars in different ways. But I think
Yeah, I love that role.
we're able to it'll be all stick with Star Wars and really appreciate it and go overboard with like our knowledge of it, specifically you guys with comics and stuff. And it's been great to be able to talk about stuff. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, the podcast has been a blast to do, and to get feedback and reception that people like it and reach out to us, and hopefully think we like again, we don't break news, but we at least we hopefully we say send me interesting things or things that people get pissed off about or have some sort of emotion to, and so we appreciate that.
I like to think that some of our listeners have had the same experiences we had when we were like looking for Star Wars podcasts or YouTube channels,
Yeah.
and we would watch some and be like, I don't like you.
I know that's the,
Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
name names or anything.
No,
and
I
I probably
agree.
couldn't off the top of my head.
And you're saying
anyway.
you want our fans to have that same experience?
I
yeah.
hope that they
Go start
have
your own
about
podcast,
those other
though.
ones, and
Yeah.
then they
They
like
like us.
but they
Yes.
like
Yeah,
us
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's why we came. Because we try to be likable and
Yes.
nice, and I don't know.
I don't know. Hopefully, people
Fun.
We have inside jokes, and we have inside jokes with each other that I feel like the audience has been picking up on, which is fun. But I also feel like hopefully we're not too inside baseball kind of with that stuff, because I feel like when we jumped in to watch a couple podcasts or listen to podcasts, it was really hard to get into because we're just like we just want to hear these people talk about Star Wars and be interesting, and again, say information that we don't know or say information that like a take that we didn't think of, but we had a hard time finding that. And maybe it's because they've been doing it longer and they were just like, we don't have legs for this, or maybe they're just
Mhm.
like, this is what we have to do. So maybe we'll get there one day. I don't think we have a lot of longevity, and before we hit that wall, we're just like, I don't know. We have to, I don't know. I think it's been a blast though.
And then the last thing for 2023, closing out the year, the biggest moment in my year,
Mm-hmm.
that Kit Fisto mask. That,
Oh,
that was
Matt-
the moment.
Matthew got me.
Oh yes.
Absolutely love it.
I just rewatched
Put it
that
on
video.
every morning as I walk from my bedside to my bathroom. Look
No,
at
you
myself
don't.
I do keep it right there in my bedroom.
You want that to be the first thing you see of yourself when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, then I take off the mask and I'm disappointed that I have to spend another day with the skin.
Luke, the implications that you have the mask in your bedroom and you're having a child this year, really? Don't.
Second child.
Yes. Yeah, second child, first child with the mask though. Just
Right.
staring at you.
Right. Boy, that next kid's gonna love Kit Fisto even more. I'm gonna be in the delivery room wearing my mask.
Can you imagine?
That's gonna be the first thing this child sees entering the world.
I just rewatched the video of you opening that mask up because it gives me so much joy.
Oh my god.
It's so funny.
OBGs already hate men, in my opinion. Every OB I've met has just hated me for being there and being a boy. Imagine if my wife's in the middle of delivering a baby and I just put on my Kit Fisto mask. They would kick me out.
Yeah. Maybe not. though.
Coming in, elbowing the nurse. I'll cut the umbilical cord.
With a lightsaber.
Pull my
plastic.
lightsaber scissors. I brought these from home.
Like the most dull things in the world because they're for 4-year-olds.
That's actually kind of a weird tangent to get on. Maybe you should cut that up and edit it out a little.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, we'll see how it ends up. But thanks for listening. Follow us on social media. Be like Mark Thompson. Follow us on TikTok. And
Yeah.
we'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you, Sammy.